And joining us right now is Steve Emerson. Of course, he's a terrorism expert, executive director of the Investigative Project on Terrorism. And he's also an expert on Islamic extremism, going all the way back to his groundbreaking PBS documentary that he did. Steve Emerson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, guys.
Steve, I'd love for you to sort of shed a little light on the latest news out of the Boston terror story. Apparently, there was a hearing. The terrorist is now going to be tried in civil court, and there was a hearing in his hospital room, and he is telling authorities now that he and his brother acted alone and they weren't linked to any global network. Should they just take his word for it? It seems like they are.
No, I think they're going to look. Right now, they're combing through every single telephone call they've made in the past 5 years, every single email. They're looking at the computer records. They're looking at banking accounts. I mean, they're looking at the forensics of everything they find in their home, the context they've made, the postings. So they're not going to take that at face value. Absolutely not. At this point, though, as a charging mechanism, they had to do something to hold them. So a superseding indictment, if it is found out that there was a larger conspiracy, is very possible. But I don't believe that there was a larger conspiracy. I really believe these were basically a pack of lone wolves who basically immersed themselves in jihadism, violent Islamic extremism, and became practitioners of it, believing that killing Americans was okay, even though they assimilated well in the United States and had the best life possible.
But Tamerlan went back to Russia a couple of times, and that seems to be rather curious. What do you know about that?
Well, he actually went back to the Russians actually warned the United States when he applied for a visa to Russia, and they had apparently picked up communications, their own communications, that they were tracking of militant Chechen terrorist leaders and Salafist preachers in Dagestan that apparently Tamerlan had been in contact with. So they gave the FBI a warning and a file on Tamerlan saying you should follow up on him. The FBI did an interview with him, lasted several hours. Yeah. But they didn't really find anything of.
All right, and this is where I've got a question. This is the thing that just sort of jumps out at me as a big, bright question. Okay, so the FBI interviews him. They say, well, we don't find anything there that's actionable. Yet, we are told that when he applied for citizenship, they found this FBI file, and they rejected his citizenship request based on the information that was in the file. So why was it enough to reject his citizenship, but not enough for the FBI to take action initially?
Well, I mean, you raise a good question, Brian. First of all, administrative actions like denying citizenship are much easier to take than, let's say, than acting on, actions that don't reach the criminal predicate level. To arrest someone, you need enough evidence that they planned something.
What about to deport him?
Well, that's another question, and a good question. That certainly could have been a remedy under immigration officials. But again, you have to understand this administration has been appeasing radical Islamic groups who front the civil rights organizations to the point where prosecutors and FBI agents have had their hands tied, or they've been neutered down to the point.
Do you have, this is important, because do you have any suggestion from your sources, your contacts, that was indeed the case here? Because if it is, then there's somebody that's got a whole lot of explaining to do. Look, and if not, that's sort of a reckless charge.
It's not a reckless charge at all. I've been dealing with prosecutors and FBI agents for 20 years, and I've been dealing, and so I have good sources here. And last night I was dealing with a long-time, one of the top career anti-terrorism prosecutors in the United States. Spoke with him for 3 hours. And what he told me, I'm not going to go into everything he told me, but a lot of it was shocking to me, okay? And look, it ranges from the purge last year in the FBI, directed by Mueller, as directed by Holder, to purge any material in the FBI archive, education curriculum, that was critical of the Muslim Brotherhood, which, of course, is the mother of all these terrorist groups and the mother of jihad. That's number one. Number two, the FBI has been told to, quote, engage in community outreach with radical mosques and radical Islamic groups that are fronts for Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. And that they don't want to do it, but they've been told to do it. And three, young FBI agents basically don't know how to react. They want to get their careers advanced, so they're not going to take any action that gets them into trouble with the leadership of the Bureau. It's become so politicized, they won't do anything aggressive. If they just stay below any profile, high radar, below the radar screen, they're going to advance. So they don't look. I'll give you one example. In Nidal Hassan, who killed 13 people at Fort Hood, there were 16 emails he sent to Anwar al-Awlaki, the leader of Al-Qaeda, the late leader of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. In one of those emails, actually in two of them, he says, "Is it permissible to kill American soldiers?" And the FBI agent who was actually reading those emails wrote, "Nothing of significance here."
Yeah. I was going to ask Steve Emerson if the Obama administration is taking the war on terror as seriously as they should, but I think he's already answered that question, so let me move to the next one. I want to explore the question of Abdul Rahman Ali Rrb. This is the Saudi national. He's here on a student visa. He was first seen, when this story first developed, as a person of interest, and then there were reports that he was going to be deported for terrorist activities, and then it turns out he was seen as a witness and a victim of the bombing. What do you know about this story? There are so many different reports about this.
Look, it's shrouded in mystery, and the answers have been contradictory. Nobody has been given the full file or answers from ICE or DHS or from this administration, despite requests from Congress. What I can tell you is known that on the day of the bombing, an ICE record was constructed while he was in the hospital, charging him with committing national security violations. I've seen the record itself, and ordering his deportation that was scheduled actually for today. Then on Wednesday last week at 5:35 p.m., the record was altered and the deportation order was rescinded. Now, what was going on here, I can't tell you. I have no idea. But the government is simply refusing to respond to any questions from Congress even, let alone the media.
I got to get one quick question about this thing that happened in Canada, where the Royal Canadian Mounted Police broke up some kind of what they say is Al-Qaeda-related plot for some Canadians to blow up a train that would have been headed toward the United States. You picking up anything on this?
Well, yeah. I mean, they called it state-sponsored terrorism because they thought they basically have evidence that Al-Qaeda in Iran directed it. Number two, these are, again, middle-class assimilated Muslims in Canada, the same types who carried out the Boston bombings, decided to become jihadists, and they would try to actually bomb the train as it passed over the Niagara Falls to kill as many as possible. So there's still lots of questions that have not been answered on this one, but the Canadians will reveal that. I think they're going to be a lot more forthcoming than the FBI is.
Well, and Steve Emerson, to that end, I want to just peel back on this just a little bit. You just said, with regard to the Saudi national, the student, there was a record created. He was going to be deported because of, quote-unquote,
unspecified national security violation.
How normal is it for that kind of charge to be made and then within 2 days for it to be reversed and there's no real paper trail as to how it got reversed?
Very abnormal. I mean, I've spoken to ICE people, I've spoken to DHS people who deal with this all the time.
Wow.
And they say this was done outside the realm of ICE, that it was handled by the Department of Justice, which is so unusual and unprecedented that it means it was politicized.
All right, and so there's congressional, you said Congress is asking questions. Who, give us some names. What congressmen are peeling this back?
Peter King, Frank Wolf, Mike McCall, chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Jeff Duncan. Right. They're not getting any answers. I mean, DHS is simply hamming up and claiming that the press has got it wrong, that they got the wrong Saudi. Well, unless the other Saudi, quote, has the same name, the same age, the same address, the same alien registration number, then he's his evil twin Skippy. I mean, honestly, that type of ridiculous explanation doesn't wash.
All right, Steve Emerson, thanks for joining us. I didn't know that Skippy was an Islamic name, actually, but we broke news here on Mornings on the Steve Emerson, thanks for joining us.